Welcome to another episode of Practice Posterity. We have a special guest, Renee Bryan. We're going to talk about a lot of things about the job market. The big thing that's on the talk about is DEI. And we're definitely going to go into how she grew her practice, things that we all should think about as we grow our own practice. So this should be a fun episode. Welcome, Renee Bryan.
Thank you so much, Randall. I'm so grateful to be here. I thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your show. It's an honor and it's a pleasure.
Awesome. We thank you for having you. So to start us off, let's level set. So if you don't mind introducing yourself, your business, and the type of clients that you serve.
Absolutely. So, my name is Renee Bryan. As you already shared, I am an educator as well as a licensed professional counselor. And my business is called Closer to Eden. And as a therapist, consultant, and trainer, my mission is to equip, empower, and develop others by integrating clinical insight and governing principles. I'm truly committed to helping individuals, communities, teams, and organizations heal, transform, and lead effectively through compassionate counsel, purposeful training, and strategic consulting. So that's the crux of my business. As far as it pertains to clients, when I do see clients individually, I usually work with people who are dealing with anxiety, grief, people who are like professionals, high level professionals, people who are looking for work life balance and stress to deal with stress management, and also people who are going through life transitions. I see a lot of people who are like moving, having a baby, going to college, just got a new job. Anybody who's going through a life transition and needs some kind of like stabilization in that regard, or just to kind of figure out how to move forward or how to ground themselves, if that makes sense.
Does make sense. Let's talk about your work with organizations. What surprised you the most with working with organizations? What's something people should look out for? They're like, well, I didn't know dealing with organizations cause this or expect why. What is some of that?
Oh my goodness. A big thing, well, I do love working with organizations because I like to work from a strength space aspect. So a lot of times organizations are doing a lot of things well, but then there's other things that they may miss, and that's where I come in. So one of the things that I enjoy working with, or that I see that occurs in a lot of organizations, is like burnout.
Yeah.
So that's huge, even at the entrepreneurial level. And so that's one of the things that I see. And sometimes employers miss that because, they're trying to get their product, maximize product or productivity. And so sometimes that happens at the expense of people. And so that's one of the things that I see occur a lot, is that, or sometimes in leadership, sometimes when you're in leadership, you have the big picture, the big vision, and you forget sometimes that either you were that person, the smaller person, the person actually doing the work, the employee. And maybe you might forget to empathize or to that you were in that position at one point as well. So those are the main things that I notice in terms of working with organizations. But I do see organizations getting better at trying to integrate corporate wellness, but there's still work to do.
Yeah, I can see that. There's a lot of conversation about the public sector as far as government jobs, but
Mhm.
during our conversation, you said there's actually a reorganization of the private sector. What are you seeing shifting in the private sector and corporate life that people may need to pay attention to?
I see, well, number one, like AI is huge. That's shifting things tremendously, as well as there's a lot of people that are losing their jobs, that are being laid off. So that's
Mhm.
huge. And, I think people weren't really necessarily prepared for that in many ways or many instances. So that's one of the things that I see. I see also there's like a breakdown of systems, right? Just because every organization, whether it's your own private organization or in the private sector, like government, school systems, the healthcare, those are all systems, right? But I see that there's a breakdown in that regard. And but that also brings up a reason for like there's new opportunities in that too, if you have the right perspective and if you look at it that way.
What do you say to young folks? Because they're at risk here, the entry level jobs, those starting
Yes.
out jobs, those administrative jobs where, it is administrative, but it's opportunity to get in the organization and learn the culture and become a professional. AI may be taking some of those roles away. Like,
Yeah.
how should these young professionals think about their opportunities in this new age?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randall. I think it's about, first for me, it's about, I think everybody's called to do something, right? I think everybody has a purpose and everybody has abilities that they were naturally given, right, by God,
Yeah.
just frankly. And so you have your natural, but everyone has natural abilities. And so I think one of the issues that I see is, people going into the wrong sector, you know, just like what I'm doing right now. I love what I do. And that helps a great deal when you actually love the work that you're doing. So I think that's first is actually finding what it is that you're passionate about, what it is that you feel that you've been put on earth to do. That will help a lot because when things are like maybe not going so well or you're not able to find that job, you can hold on to knowing like, I know I have a purpose and I know it's going to break for me at some point. So, first, getting into a sector or a discipline that you really are passionate about. I think that's number one. Number two is knowing how to pivot, knowing how to shift, sharpening yourself in whatever skill set that you do have. It's just like a garden. If you have a garden and you put the plants in the ground, but you don't water it, they're not going to grow. It's the same thing with our skills and abilities. You have to learn how to cultivate those skills and abilities, whether that's taking courses, getting coaching, or getting counseling, whatever it is that's going to help you to, sharpen those abilities so that you actually become competitive
Yeah.
in whatever field it is that you're working in. So I just think becoming an expert, if you will, really getting that discipline and really working on your craft and sharpening those skills. And there's various ways that you can do so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think back in the day, a degree was a ticket to the middle class. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now the ticket can be revoked at any time if you don't keep your skills up to date. If you're not learning and being just as passionate about what you love, I think that's a thing.
And being flexible. And I also think, people, I think people underestimate entry level positions. Like I started out very entry level, especially switching my career from education to clinical mental health counseling. I'm still an educator, will always will be, but switching that career and understanding like, hey, if I come into this job, it's almost like you have to outwork yourself. You have to let people know or they see that she's valuable. I need to keep her on my team. Become valuable. And the way you become valuable is first and foremost already just knowing your true identity, but then also, like I said, cultivating your skill set, taking the extra steps to be the best at work, taking initiative. I see a lot of people sometimes not even taking initiative at work, and people watch and people look at things like that. So,
That's big. And I think another thing, people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I tell folks, corporation, the key word there is cooperation.
that's good. It's
Do
good.
people like working with you? Talent is a beautiful
Yes,
thing.
that's good.
I really want to work with somebody I like with versus just working with another rock star. Speak on that element of building relationships, being likable, and not just purely focusing on I'm great.
Oh, that's so good, Randall. I was going to speak to that. You took the words right out of my mouth. interpersonal relationships are everything. So I call it social currency is really what it is. And people, I think in the age that we're living in, people don't realize how much weight social currency really holds. And it's not the type of social currencies where you're opportunistic, right?
Mhm.
It's like really being authentic about your relationships and really caring and seeing people and wanting to build relationships with them. I think that that can really take you far if you really recognize how much weight social currency truly holds. And I think people really underestimate that, especially in the modern age of social media and things of that nature. Like people really still yearn for connection and in person, face to face connection, even in person connection, right? People still yearn for that. And I think that, we can get away from that sometimes because we can just pick up our phone and text or, FaceTime or whatever the case may be. So I think that that interpersonal dynamic is so important and it actually helps you to leverage your career in many ways because if you don't have interpersonal skills, I can almost guarantee that it's going to be much harder for you to grow or to get promoted because that matters.
Yes, it does. I had a mentor. He always tells me, Randall, you have to get out the office. And this may sound, a little icky, but people have to smell your pheromones to really say, I know you. I trust Randall. Randall's a good guy. There is an element of, text, there is an element of video call, but just being around somebody saying, hey, I know him,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, it's very huge. And I feel like, when you contacted me about this, I'm
Hmm.
like, I remember you, I know you. And
Hmm.
that was where my eagerness also came from is because I already felt like we had a relationship to
Hmm.
some degree, even though I have not, seen you in a while. But it's that relationship that really caused me to get excited about this.
It's really big. Now, let's take a more darker side to this conversation.
Uh-huh.
What's been throughout the news is a lot of DEI programs going away. And it has effects on employment opportunities, has effects on different industries. Let's first start off, what are your thoughts on the DEI initiatives in general, and then go into the effects it's having on individuals' careers and industry?
Mhm. Well, I do believe that diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging, people
Mhm.
forget about belonging,
Yeah.
that's huge. It's very important in wherever you are, whether it's your own family, because you have diversity in your own family, whether it's within your organization that you either work for or whether it's in a college that you're in, it's important. I think everybody wants to be heard, seen, and understood. And I think that's the crux, a big part of what that's about, just at the base level, right? As far as it, being dismantled, if you will, in many regards. I think that again, it's just shows a time for innovation. I think it's a time to think outside the box with that. Like for example, I believe because we're here in the Metro Atlanta area, um, if I'm not mistaken, Emory, there's a new president, a female president at Emory, and
Mhm.
she's an African American woman
Yes.
and I remember it was a couple of months ago, she actually said that they were going to be moving away from, DEI initiatives and that kind of thing. Um, and I think people were very upset, and that's understandable. But I feel, if I remember correctly, in the next week, she actually said that now they're going to be, instead of that, they're going to be offering full-time scholarships for everyone, every undergrad student who makes under a certain amount of money or their family makes under a certain amount of money. So that's thinking outside the box. How can you help people that are underserved or that population that maybe are in a certain tax bracket? how can you help them without using that terminology, if you will, since it's such a polarizing, in the climate that we're in. So I think that that was a good way to think outside of the box around how can we still, um, acknowledge, or how can we still serve communities that are underserved. I think that that was a good way of thinking outside the box to be able to do so. And I think that is what people have to do, or will have to do in general, just be innovative around how they approach that. Um, and I think, modeling it, right? In wherever you are,
Mhm.
being inclusive, helping people to feel like they belong, you know. I think that those are the some of the ways that that can occur.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think innovation was needed. And some could say innovation was needed even to begin with. If
Hmm.
anybody's ever applied through a DEI process, it's completely
Hmm.
different from the traditional process, and it's usually less enjoyable of a journey than
Yes.
you do a traditional way. So, in innovation, like I said, looking at it as an opportunity, I think that's a beautiful thing to say. Um,
Yeah.
Now, we touched on this earlier, work-life balance. We
Hmm.
see a lot of burnout, and the burnout is the mixture of just feel like sometimes people have less capacity as they had back in the day, driven
That's true.
by physical things. It could be social media, more entertainment, more distraction, so you can't focus. But how
Mm.
does somebody in this day and age deal with burnout?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, you have to recognize what burnout is, right? You have to know what it is. You have to be able to recognize the signs, because it can be hard to recover from if it's gone too far. I remember a time where I actually was burned out and I had to actually take a month off of work. And
Yeah.
everybody doesn't have that. You don't have that, what do you call it, the opportunity, or maybe most people aren't able to do that. But in my case, I was able to do that, and I had to, because I was it was just it was rough. So
Mm,
I think first and foremost, you have to understand what it is, and I think you have to also know, okay, how do I, you have to be proactive, right? And you have to have like it's almost like going to the doctor, getting your physical every year. That's a proactive thing that you do. It's the same thing. It's about taking care of yourself. And that looks different for everybody,
mm,
right? So it's about putting things in pen on your calendar versus in pencil, because in pencil, with pencil, you can erase it, but putting things on your calendar that are specifically for you, like whatever it is that fills your cup, whatever it is that you enjoy doing, making sure you're making the time for those things, whether it's family,
mhm,
whether it's leisure. I don't know if it's, some people taking vacation, sometimes it's taking a massage, sometimes it's riding a bike through the mountains, or through a trail. Whatever it is that helps you to take care of yourself. I think putting those things in place early is going to be really important. And work-life balance, to be honest, Randall, is really about prioritizing. It's
okay.
the way you prioritize. It's not perfection. I
Mhm,
don't think anyone can ever have perfect balance, but it's about how can I prioritize these things in my life right now that I have going on. Some things you may have to put away and or stop doing or quit altogether. So under recognizing that you have to prioritize, and whatever's important to you, that's how you create that list.
makes sense. Now, I'm a big person on performance. Like, how do I optimize myself to perform the best? Whether that's show up for my wife, show up for my family, show up for my job. How does one optimize? I think that's an opportunity of like, how do we like internally get to the place where we're functioning at full force so we don't have that burnout, so we don't have to take those hiatuses, even though it's not a bad thing, but that's more of
Mhm.
a opportunistic choice rather than a reaction to circumstance. Like, how do we get that optimized?
Mhm. I think it goes back to taking care of yourself first, like making sure, spiritually, that you're taking care of yourself mentally and emotionally and even physically. Like, are you eating well? Are you exercising? Even if it's just a walk or whatever it is that you do, are you feeding yourself with good things? I know we even talk about social media, or even books, just reading books. What are you feeding yourself?
Yeah.
Because that matters. What are you feeding your brain? What are you feeding your mind? What are you feeding your spirit with? I think it starts with that. And then making sure too, I think we already discussed relationships. Relationships are so important. So making sure that you have people around you that really see you and
Um,
that can pour back into you, not take away from you. Relationships are also about like reciprocity. So it's like I give, you give, we receive, I receive, you receive, right? But you have those relationships that can be toxic and that people just take, or they don't even ask about you or try to see how you're doing. It's just all about them, like those self-absorbed,
yeah.
type relationships. So I think those are the things, looking at how you're doing mentally, physically, spiritually, and relationally.
I think it was important. I read a book. It was like, I think the title's called Who Not How. And they said, I don't want to work on a relationship. I want a relationship that works. And,
Ah, that's
and
good.
that doesn't mean, and relationships are work, bottom line. You got to put time in, you got to reinvest, but there has to be some ROI from
Yes,
that
so
time.
good.
It's not
Mhm.
economic opportunity all the time, but there has to be something with that. How does one maintain and fruitful relationships?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
what is that in this current modern age? Because I think it's different than what it used to be in the past.
Yes, for sure. And I love that you said ROI. That's such a good way to look at relationships. And it's not about like, oh, what are you going to give me or what am I? It's just recognizing that a relationship is, first of all, we're not an island,
Yes,
right?
yes,
We
yes.
need people, right? We're built for relationships, right? And people are interdependent on each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I think that's understanding that and also recognizing that, um, you know, relationships, in order to gain those good relationships, it's being what you want, right? Whatever you desire in relationships, you become that yourself too, because those are the type of people that you'll draw into your space. You know, so I think just modeling what um, people in good relationships, what that looks like, whether that's empathizing, that's huge, being able to empathize with people, active listening, right? People have I feel like in many ways they've lost that trait of being able to actively listening because social media has rewired people's brains too, right? So, because you're seeing things so quickly that your attention span is not there anymore. So active listening, also, just in general, I think being there for people, showing up for people when they need it most, and even when you think that they don't need it, just being able to like see people, and paying attention to them. I think all of those things matter, and help with relationships and building those. And of course, trust. The way that you build trust with people is consistency, and reliability. If you're not reliable, if you're not consistent, it's hard to build a relationship that way because it's hard to trust someone that's not consistent.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
think that's important. Like, be the friend that you want to be. Somebody who's
Mhm.
consistent and reliable is probably not going to associate with somebody who isn't. It's just they're
Right.
going to repel
That
each other and
part.
go separate ways.
Yep.
People who want to listen don't want to be around people who want to talk all the time because there has to be some
Mhm.
some balance
Balance.
to that.
That's correct.
Um,
Mhm.
in your background, you spent some time with police officers,
I did.
and I really want to highlight that because I think there's a subculture of policing and all those things. What was it like working with police officers? And what did you see while working with them that may have changed your perspective on community, policing, crime, anything of that nature?
hmm I actually still do, and it's been such a humbling yet learning experience for myself. First and foremost, what I have seen is that police officers are human.
Yes.
Their humanity is very present. When I'm in my dealings with them,
Mhm.
I've also recognized that anybody can make an impact in the community. It's about, I think one of my roles is helping to rebuild trust with community, with in my work with police, is helping with those community relationships, recognizing and showing people like, hey, no, we're actually here to help you, and they want to help you, right? And I'm not saying that all police, we know there's been history with things as well, but uh, I would say that yeah, that it's about, from what I've seen, is the community relational part of it has been a huge aspect, recognizing that police are they're human beings. They eat, sleep, get mad, get sad, just like anybody else. But also recognizing that they deal with a lot. Like, it, but to actually be embedded in seeing what they see on a daily basis and what they have to carry, like physically and mentally and emotionally daily, and how they have to compartmentalize, it just gives you a different respect for them. And seeing what they do behind the scenes when nobody's watching, that has been like eye opening for me as well. And I would encourage anyone that can or that has the opportunity to go to your local police station and see if they, or police precinct, to see if they because a lot of them will have like a citizens academy, or they allow like ride-alongs where you can actually ride along with the police officer to just experience what their day, how they, or their evening, you know, and also to learn why they do the things they do, why they have to do certain things, especially as pertains to like use of force, like when that's appropriate, why they have to do that. So I think just being an educator, education is important to me, because I think we live in a society that's very, can be very polarizing, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think there's also a lot of play on people's emotions, and emotionalism. There's a play on that. And so, first of all, finding out your facts by getting your own education, I think, is really, really important. And one way that we can rebuild those and build bridges with police, with law enforcement.
I like that. I think that's important. Like if you expose yourself to them, they're not the boogeyman anymore. They're not there to
No.
harm you. They could actually be there to protect you. More than likely, they are there to protect you.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty big. So
Yes,
you
it
decided
is.
to go into business for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Why do that? Why take the risk? Why hang your shingle? Like, what was that for you? Why did you go out on your own?
Yeah. Well, for me, it's about, again, going back to that purpose. I'm all about living a life of purpose. But secondly and foremost, it's about legacy.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important to leave a legacy, for the next generation. And I think it's also important to be a trailblazer, um, you know, doing things that maybe previous generations didn't do,
Mhm.
or maybe you see how you can do it better, right? So for me, that's what it was about. It's about leaving a legacy, and also it's also about helping people, and pouring back into people, because I feel like my business is human centered, it's people centered.
Mhm.
And so I think I wanted to definitely fill a gap with that, like being more people centered, leaving a legacy for myself, as well as not limiting how far I could go. And I think when you have your own business, there's no limit with how far you can actually go. And it doesn't matter where you are. in your business, I feel like you can always grow. There's always room for growth. There's always room for change. There's always room for innovation. So I think the sky's the limit when you have your business, your own business.
I
So,
like that. I like that. You mentioned the word legacy twice. What does legacy mean to you? Like, what type of legacy are you building? What legacy are you trying to leave behind, if you even define that as part of legacy?
mhm. I feel like my legacy is about, again, it's people centered. It's actually pouring back into others. It's making a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah.
It's saying that when I leave here, I want people to know like Renee made a difference in my life, or her business Closer to Eden made a difference in my life. I'm a better person because of this, because I took advantage of her services. So that's what I would say is, my legacy is about also um, maximizing my potential, being the woman that God created me to be. Those are all a part, I believe, are a part of my legacy. And also, I think being a prototype,
Mm.
for excellence, or being a prototype for, um, helping people, like being a good humanitarian, if you will. I think those are the main things when I think about like legacy, is, being the person that God created me to be, and being that prototype for the next generation in terms of how you carry yourself, how you conduct yourself, how you treat people, how you treat the people that you do business with, that kind of thing.
No, I think that's spot on. So you hang your shingle, you're in
Mhm.
business, but
Yep.
to be in business, you have to service clients.
Yep.
How did you first find your clients early on?
Hmm. I don't remember exactly how I found my first client, but in general, that social currency is huge. Remember, we talked about that, like just talking to people, letting people know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Also, for me as a therapist, putting my profile out there.
Mhm.
So, like on LinkedIn, it's also on, you know, like the Psychology Today. That was one of the profiles that I had at one point, and therapists putting it on different like therapist profiles. That was one of the ways that I got a lot of my clients at the beginning. Also going to events, right? Going to different events where people that are looking for my services would be, right? Either that's a conference or just a local community meeting, those kinds of things I would go to, I still do go to a lot of that. Like I'm really involved in my communities, in the communities around me, like the Metro Atlanta communities in many ways. And I got a lot of my business from that, simply being showing up. Honestly, I got it through like serving. I get my business even, through volunteering and things of that, and people finding out what they do, what you do. So yeah. And I'm not a big social media person, but I do have social media platforms and website. So all of those are also channels too for getting business as well. So yeah, because people can find you easily in those ways.
I think it's important that we have social media and people think post, 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 share, 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 like, comment, comment. But my experience for pretty much all practices, hand to hand combat is how you grow your business. Showing
Mm,
up, touching
yeah.
the people, shaking their hand, looking somebody eye to eye, like from the beginning stages, that's going to be more of your bread and butter, I believe, than versus the social media stuff, which you don't, is not do those things, but
No,
expectation
absolutely not.
wise,
Mhm.
you definitely have to be in person in somebody's face.
Yep, definitely. I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely don't throw the the bathwater out with the baby, right? You have to use a mixture of all of it. But me personally, that has been my main, that social currency and being authentic,
Mm.
like not, even when people say, oh, let's go to this networking event, I don't even see it as that. I see it as just, I'm going there to build relationships with people, like
Yes.
authentic relationships. So yeah, that's for me. And I know even with you mentioned like posting, like people think I gotta post, I gotta post, I gotta post. For me, that's personally, I've experienced it. It's kind of draining for me because I'm more introverted. And
Yes.
so I get a lot of my energy from being alone or solitude, right? And or being with people who fill my tank.
Yes.
That really gives me energy. Um, and so yeah, and I would advise you have to figure out what works for you. I
Yes.
remember I had a coach, a business coach, who actually we talked through like what are some of the ways, just as you're saying, what are some of the ways that you want to, you know, market your business. And
Yeah.
I remember, I'll never forget, she told me like you do not have to do what everybody else is doing. And that really resonated with me. And I've always kept that. She was like, you can do, she's like, even with social media, you can choose one platform if you want,
Mhm.
or you can, whatever it is that works for you, because it's your business, you know? So,
Yeah.
mhm.
And it's so a lot of the things that we think about as far as marketing is based on the industrial model in the sense of somebody has a product, they're
uh,
distributing across the United States. But when you talk about one-on-one professional services or health services, you
yep.
don't need that many clients to have a successful business. So you do have the option on how you want to market, how you want to touch people. And hopefully people will feel empowered to know that.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah. It's about what works for you and your particular market and your business. But I just really believe you have to do what's comfortable for you, because some people aren't comfortable with certain things, and I mean that probably will come through, you know.
Yes.
So you have to find the right fit for you.
Spot on. Now,
Mhm.
you mentioned meeting people, but how does one nurture and massage a relationship to yield the fruit? Because it's almost like you said, tending a garden. You have to touch it. You have to be there for it. Like, how do you nurture those relationships? You go to a nonprofit event or a charity event. You meet somebody amazing,
Yeah.
but there's something that has to happen after that.
Absolutely. Yeah. There definitely is something that has to happen. And I think just like any other relationship, you follow up.
Mm,
If you get that person's card or contact information, send them an email. I mean, like the next day, within the week, I would say within a week, send them an email, letting them know that you enjoyed the conversation or whatever the case may be. Just be authentic. Um, I also think inviting them maybe out for coffee or for lunch so that you can get to know each other's stories or whatever it is that you want to talk about. But that's, I think, how you start to build that relationship, reaching out. You got the card for a reason, right? Might as well use the card and build that relationship with that person, or that's the starting point, right? The entry point. So I would say that would be a good start and see where it goes from there.
when I went out on my own, I didn't realize how rare it was just to follow up. You will be surprised how many people will take your card, not send you an email, and people will be surprised, like, "Oh wow, you actually reached out to me." And secondly, "Oh,
Mhm.
you actually want to meet with me." Those things you may not think is a differentiator, but it's a huge differentiator.
It is. It is. And that is the difference between someone who follows up and someone who doesn't,
Mhm.
right? You just never know what can hurt. How can
Yes.
it hurt? It doesn't hurt for you to follow up with the person. You can see where it goes,
Mhm.
there. And again, it goes back to what I said. People want to be acknowledged, right? And it shows that, oh, you actually did like our conversation, and may go further from you actually doing that. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's just interesting. So one thing you mentioned earlier, and we talked about in our pre-call, a spirit of excellence.
mhm,
Um, if you don't mind, define what a spirit of excellence is to you, and how do you put that into your business?
mhm. Okay, so I think a spirit of excellence is, first of all, again, it's like it's not perfection, right? I think excellence is a standard,
Mhm.
It's the way you carry yourself. It's the way you conduct yourself. It's being on time. It's being conscious of the other person's time.
Mhm.
It's in your branding, right? It's in the way you do things. It's in the way you handle your customers, right? Yeah, I think it's your dealings, the way you deal with people. It's also, I think, that extra touch, right? That I just mentioned, reaching out, saying thank you or sending a thank you card or a letter or a note. And I think that when we're talking about excellence, it's those little things that matter that someone may not do, but you're doing. And it's noticeable because you're doing it and maybe another company is not. So yeah, that's kind of how I see what a spirit of excellence is. Yep.
And somebody might say, well, I don't sweat the details. Those
Mm,
details can mean
that
something to
hurt.
somebody. And I've learned that people make purchase decisions a lot of times out of irrational behavior versus rational. So you may have the perfect product, but somebody else sent a thank you note. You may have the
Exactly.
perfect product, but the other person followed up within 2 minutes versus 5 hours. And that may seem small and each one could solve the problem, but that 2 minutes just touches you a different way, especially in this day in society.
Yep, that special touch. I really believe that it matters. It's the way you handle people, letting them know, like customers, letting them know that they matter.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yep.
So in your business, you leverage workshops.
Mhm.
So how do you structure your workshops? What does that do for your business?
Oh, I love workshops. I because of that educator's heart, I love
Mm.
to teach. I love to see when people light up when they learn something
Yeah,
new.
yeah, yeah,
Um, how do I structure them? It depends on what the company or organization needs. So I tailor make them for whatever the need is. And then I really spend time crafting
yeah,
that specific workshop just for them. Again, it's that special touch, right? It's personalizing things. That's also what the spirit of excellence, when you're operating that way, that's what it does. It's personalizing, making people feel special because you took the time to actually, craft something just specifically for them. So that's what I do when I create workshops. It's just really personalizing it for a particular group
yeah.
or organization. Hmm.
Is there a target market for your workshops? Are you targeting a certain group, solving a certain problem? What are you doing with your workshops?
I definitely target like corporations, or even I've dealt with work with nonprofits too,
Yeah,
as it pertains to, again, that wellness, that how are you taking care of employees? How are you preventing employees from getting burned out?
yeah,
So those are, like my target audiences when it comes to that. Um, Also, yeah, because I just think about a nonprofit that I served. Yeah, it was about helping them. They were actually working with refugees, and so it's helping them to understand how to care for themselves when dealing with trauma and those kinds of things. Um, but yeah, it's about yeah, creating, that is my target audience, is corporations, people who are looking for solutions for stress management, or maybe they even want help with their leadership, and things of that nature. So mhm.
now, people, we advise this as financial planners. Slowly ramp up your business while working a full-time job. Um, how have you been able to balance them both? You have a full-time job obligation, and then you have your business you're growing. What is that like? And how are you making it work?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, Randall. It's tough. It is tough to do it, but you know being kind to myself.
Hmm.
is number one, because I recognize that it's not easy. So being kind to myself, also recognizing that I can only do what I can do, you know, taking it little bits at a time and celebrating my small wins, right? Instead of saying, oh, you didn't get this done, or beating myself up, recognizing like, what, Renee, what do you even have the capacity for? Like, I'm honest with myself. And right now in my this stage of my life, I know what I have the capacity for, right? And so leaning into that and working that, whatever that time is that I have, utilizing that time and maximizing it, you know, like for example, like with this, I thought this was important. So I made sure that I created the time, or had the time, or cut out the time, to be able to do this. So yeah, it's, you make time for what's important to you. And if your business is important to you, you'll make the time for it. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, you know? Yeah. And I think it's also important to get around people who are also in business
Yes.
that you can, that you have, you can relate to, right? Because I do believe that iron sharpens iron. So being around like-minded individuals that you can kind of connect with, talk about things with, and grow together and bounce things off of, that kind of thing. Yeah.
One thing that you mentioned was I know the capacity that I have.
Uh-huh.
Every year around this time, usually in December, I reassess capacity, how much I want to spend on this for the hours, how many spend on this hours, and it changes as I age, right? How does one think about their own capacity?
Mm. And you mentioned something very key. It changes as you age. Because the 20s ain't the 30s, and the 30s ain't the 40s. It's different.
Yes.
So recognizing that, and just, you have to shift, you have to adjust,
Mhm.
right? If you know that your energy is higher in the morning, you
Mhm.
get your stuff done in the morning, most of the important things. If you know it's better in the evenings, maximize those evenings, or in the afternoons, whatever the case may be. um but recognizing that, you can tell, like, if you don't have the energy that you used to have, you just have to kind of shift, I think, and try to do things, you know, be honest with yourself about what you can and can't do. Because I think when you're honest with yourself, it'll be easier, to make those decisions versus thinking that, oh, I could do everything. Mm-mm. Yeah, then you'll be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Definitely, definitely. So, one of the hardest things as a business owner, especially a service based business, is how do I price my services?
Uh-huh.
Um, what has been your pricing journey? Because there's no set rate for a workshop. There's no set rate for a speaking engagement. There's, in some cases, we're talking about private pay. There's no set rate for any type of therapy. How have you set your rates, and how has that evolved over time?
That's a good question. So I think one of the ways that you set your rates is by I think, your level of education. That's important. Also, as well as by your years of experience too. Years of experience. And like for me specifically, because I'm licensed, I use that. So, for example, however many years you've been licensed, a lot of times I'll raise my rates every 2 years, because every time my renewal license comes around, I'll raise my rates. And I know, given that the times we're in recently, I did not, because I'm trying to be, respectful of an understanding of the times that we're in. Um, so I didn't raise them that last cycle. But I think those are some, markers. So education, experience, if you're licensed, take that into account. Also, like, what kind of value are you bringing to the table? You know, I think you should charge what type of value you think that you're bringing to the table. And I think there's a balance with things. I think there's a balance of being fair and being just plain out greedy. That's just me. I think that you should be fair in your dealings with people. I know for me too, I also, for my clients, if need be, I have a sliding scale, you know? So there's ways that you can serve people without it being a barrier, right? I also think that I lost my train of thought, but there's something it'll come back to me. But yeah, I think that's a pretty much the standard for me. That's been my experience. And of course, what I started out when I started out counseling, I was a associate licensed. So you charge a different rate, when you're fully licensed, of course. And I think also taking into account, some people take into account like the area, the area that you serve, that matters, who you serve, you know. I think looking at all of those factors matter.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a big fan of, like you mentioned, results. I
Hmm.
get paid based off the results that I provide. And if I'm always focused on results, then I
Hmm.
feel like that actually leans you towards that spirit of excellence that you mentioned. Like,
Yep.
I'm always trying to move the needle, and people will pay
Yep.
for that
And they,
needle to be
yep,
moved.
they
They'll
will.
also pay for a seat to be warm, but there's a difference between somebody moves the needle pay and also just having somebody to check a box in a program.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. So that speaks to, you bring value. If you bring value and results, as you're saying, then yeah, people pay for that.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I think it's also important. One of the things I also think about is, when I'm looking at when I work with different companies, is like their budget. Like what's that company's budget, I take that into consideration at times, but then I also, it's a balancing act for me because I do believe I can provide results, so you should pay me for my value.
Yeah.
um so
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I do a little speaking, and I feel like, well, if this is the compensation, maybe somebody else could be better served speaking there.
yeah,
But
that's
then
true.
again, it's like, well, I want to serve a certain population. So how do I balance that?
Yeah. Yep. So
It's a tough thing to do.
mhm.
As we all know, as service-based businesses, anything in a practice model, we don't receive a multiple as far as an exit value or a selling value as like an IT company. So usually we have to become independently wealthy from our practice, meaning most of our savings, our investments, our retirement accounts. What is
Mhm.
your current strategy of building wealth while running your practice and operating your business?
Mhm. Well, I do think, and I think that this happens a lot of time, and even in our community, like people aren't fully always educated on investing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think investing is huge. And people think, well, I'm this age now, but just start, with your either what a Roth IRA, your traditional IRA, or your 457B,
Yeah.
whatever the case is. It's important to have something and to invest. um, I also think it's important, I'm going to go back to this, but investing in people. There's a return on investment when you invest in people. I can't tell you the number of times that I've, gotten things, referrals as a result of that. So that's another thing for me. I also think it's important to, if you're able to get more real estate. I know right now real estate is crazy, a little bit crazy, especially here, but get additional properties if you're able to. Um, and the good old saving. I think saving your money still matters, right? I think that still matters. And I think also being willing to take risks with like that, going back into that, being innovative
Yeah.
is important for your business. You may have to scale or invest in your business in some
Yeah.
kind of way, and that may cost, but what's the, like you mentioned, the return on investment when you do so. Yeah, those are the ways that I think, in terms of building wealth, investing, real estate, um, investing in people, because there's a return on that. Yeah,
Uh, yeah,
and saving.
yeah, big believer in the people piece. Now, for you yourself, do you plan on growing your practice, or do you plan on selling your practice at some point in time? Like where do you see yourself as far as your business?
I don't see myself as selling it, but I don't know. That could change maybe in the future, but I don't see myself as selling it. Maybe passing it down to someone
Hmm.
else. Remember, we talked about that legacy
Yeah,
piece. But I don't see myself as selling it.
yeah,
So yeah.
makes
hmm
sense. Now, this is where I take my medicine. You serve a client base. What are financial planners missing with helping the people that you serve?
Hmm. Um, I think financial planners, what are they missing? I think it's important to understand what the climate is right now, right? And being realistic about where people really are and what they can actually do and contribute. Because I know what people say, at least to do what, 20% in your 401k. What if the person, or the 457b, what if the person can't do that? What is a way that they can, a financial advisor can help that person to actually get to where they want to be? Um, so I think that sometimes financial advisors miss out on opportunities to educate people more in that financial literacy, that financial education. There's so many there's that is needed. Even we talk about like this whole crypto currency thing. You know, people need education even on that. You know, so I think that's one of the ways, or some of the missed opportunities, I think, for financial advisors.
I think it's big. I think you spoke to helping people be able to save amount. Well, let's focus on human capital to be able to earn a certain amount or rearrange
Mhm.
their lifestyle to save. Either way.
Yep.
And it's usually both, to be honest with you.
hmm
I tell folks all the time, I don't think you have a money management problem. You may have more of an income problem. That's a tough pill for some folks to swallow.
That part. Yeah.
And it's for the good. So if
Mhm.
somebody's listening there, say, hey, I need one of those workshops. I need counseling. I need to speak to her. What is the best way people can reach out to you?
People can reach out to me via my website. I have a request, like you can, just drop me a line. You can, or whatever kind of inquiry you have. My website is reneebryan.com. People can also email me at info@reneebryan.com. And my email is also my website. And people can also message me or hit me up on social media, with the handles Closer to Eden. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, yeah, all the things. So, and I think, yeah, people can hit me up there as well. So, yep.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you very much for joining us. You touched on how do we deal with police? I think people hearing that over and over again to kind of quiet some of the stuff we see on social media is important. You touched on burnout. You touched on, what does it really take to grow your business and get clients? That hand-to-hand combat versus just posting all the time. So we like the nuggets that you dropped. We thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Randall. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to be able to sit with you and talk to you today. I appreciate you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Feeling the pressure? You're not alone. I'm Randall Lavery with Deasil Wealth Management, and I specialize in simplifying wealth for those who are near retirement and business owners. We'll create a plan that fits your unique needs so you can actually enjoy the wealth that you built. We consider our firm results driven with a touch of fun. Ready for clarity? Click the Learn More and schedule your free discovery call. Let's build the financial future together.
Money, 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 money.